Welcome to Community Cafe. My name is Martine Watkins and I will be your host today. And on the show, we're going to be holding an interview with Dr. Faris Sabbah. And I'm really grateful to have Dr. Sabbah join us this afternoon. And I'd like to start off each show as to why the guest is special to me as well as the topic. So I'd start with education, and this show, for the first show, is extra special to me because I come from a long line of educators and I'm married to an educator. My dad held the position of superintendent of schools prior to Dr. Sabbah. My mom's in education, and education has really informed my approach to policymaking and has really guided my vision for the future generation of Santa Cruz. And I'm really grateful to work alongside such an extraordinary leader like Dr. Sabbah. And I've seen him really just thrive over these past several years, especially how he's mobilized during this pandemic and has held just incredible transparency, authenticity, and a willingness to collaborate to serve our children. So with that, thank you, Dr. Sabbah, for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Martine, and thank you for your kind words. It's really a pleasure to join you today.
Thank you. So let's just jump right into a few questions. And I thought maybe we could start with you telling our viewers about your position, the role of the County Office of Education, and sort of like what you do.
Thank you. Well, the County Superintendent of Schools, it's interesting because it's a lot of people don't know what the County Office of Education does and what the County Superintendent does. And so I appreciate any opportunity to be able to share a little bit of information about the role of the position and how we intersect with our school districts and the services to our students. So the majority of the services are provided by school districts, and the funding for the most part comes to the school districts. But the County Office of Education plays a really important role in providing support and oversight to the school districts. And so when it comes to reviewing the budgets for the school districts, when it comes to the appeals that take place, if there is a concern about an inter-district transfer or some disciplinary action that the district has taken, the county office really represents the state in providing that support and that oversight. And we also provide a lot of services, especially to our smaller school districts. Many of them that don't have the kind of the critical mass of funds to be able to have a curriculum and instruction team or a bunch of resources. They rely on the county office to be able to provide that support. We've kind of divided into different divisions, and each of those divisions provides different kinds of services. So our business services division provides support when it comes to making sure that schools are keeping their budgets that their budgets are in a positive place, and we look at a 3-year window of their budgets. Another service that the County Office of Education provides is that we have an educational services division. And so we provide support for the districts when it comes to their local control and accountability plans. A lot of the planning they do to ensure compliance with the requirements of the state. But I think more than a compliance office, we really want to be a support office. And so we are advocates for equity, we're advocates for students. And so we want to support districts when they're making decisions about how to spend their funding, about how to build programs that meet the needs of different kinds of students. And so we try to provide that equity lens in almost everything that we do. We also have we provide technology services as well. And also we have we're kind of a small school district onto ourselves. We provide educational services to all students who have been expelled or otherwise have been unsuccessful in the traditional schools. We provide oversight when it comes to charter schools. And we also provide services for foster youth and students who are experiencing homelessness. And so it's really, in some ways, we provide a lot of additional support that are targeted in some of our most vulnerable students in our county. And we have a long tradition of being focused and maintaining that equity lens and thinking about how is it that some students kind of fall through the cracks in the system, and how do we build robust systems that are thinking about all of the different students, the different needs that they have, and making sure that we're building school systems that are supportive of that wide range of different kinds of students that come to us.
Wow. Well, thankfully, we have you and the entire COE team here to do that. And especially right now with so many of our vulnerable students falling through the cracks, it's so important to make sure that we're leading with a lens of equity. And that's fantastic that that's what's happening at the County Office of Education. So the next question I was just going to kind of talk a little bit about, which I am in the thick of it right now, which is how are we handling, as parents, you're a parent, you have young kids, I have young kids, distance learning, really maintaining, doing our best to maintain everything. What advice do you have for parents or the community as it relates to where we're at today with learning from home and working from home for some folks?
Well, I think, going back to the equity lens, I think that this pandemic has really impacted families in such a profound way when it comes to pretty much all aspects of life. And I think that it's impacted their livelihood, their ability to find childcare, schooling, everything that is related to families and all the resources that they're used to having, and kind of all the support systems that have existed have been really put into question and really have been challenging for families to access. And so I think an important role for the county office has also been to try to figure out how to overcome many of these challenges. A lot of our students have had a really tough time with distance learning in the spring, and this was also very challenging for parents, especially if they're not able to find childcare, if they're not able to provide the kind of the time and attention for their students. And that's been one of the toughest pieces of the decision that was made by the governor to move towards a distance learning only environment. We recognize that we had to do that for health and safety's sake, but we also recognize how impactful it is on parents and how challenging it is. And so I think that one of the most important pieces is that things are going to be, I think, very different for families now in comparison to how they were in the spring. The schools have had time to really think about what distance learning is going to look like. We provided a lot of training to our teachers and staff. We've worked to decrease the digital divide. We've worked in a variety of different areas to try to improve the quality of the distance learning experience for students, and also to facilitate that relationship between teacher and student. And so I think that parents hopefully will get to see that. They'll get to see daily interactions with their students, synchronous learning that will take place live with their teacher, also recorded, asynchronous recorded lesson planning. And so I think that parents are going to see that there's a lot more support for them, and they'll be able to also access a lot more resources than they were able to do in the past. In terms of advice, I'm struggling with, as this is our first week and my kids are starting school. I think it's really challenging to be able to balance being able to be a good support for my kids, and at the same time to continue doing my work. And we also have an environment where we don't come into work as much, and we're working from home many times, and that's really challenging as well. And so I think that getting to know the different resources that the school districts have made available, looking at the resources at the County Office of Education, you can go to our website at santacruzcoe.org, and there is a distance learning part of our website that you can get to by just clicking where it talks about coronavirus on the front page, and then you can go to the distance learning section. There's a lot of resources that are available for families, and the schools are really mobilizing all of their resources to do everything they can to support parents. So I'm really hoping that parents are going to experience a lot more support, a more robust experience for their children, and we're hoping that this is going to be really a successful experience for learning for students this year.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think our daughters just started school this week, and we all just are doing the best we can, but it's so important for those who need extra resources to know where to find them. And as you mentioned, it's really wonderful that there's resources at the County Office of Education, but also to look at the districts and see what they're providing, given what we learned last semester. So we'll get through it, right?
That's right. We'll get through it together.
So I was kind of thinking about the pandemic and prioritizing public health and safety. What are your thoughts on that as we're balancing kind of this reopening, closing? How do you feel about that as the leader of education in our county?
Well, I think that one of the things that we're trying to provide as a county is try to provide some consistency, and also to try to provide more certainty, because I think there's just so many questions and quite about the risk factors, and is my child safe? Am I safe? What is my best way of interfacing with my school community, and so on. And so one of the things that we've done, we worked on a lot this year, these last few weeks and months, I think, has been to work collaboratively with all of our school districts to talk about how we can have consistent protocols as much as possible, knowing that they have to be customized for each school district. But I think that that's really important, because the inconsistency creates more confusion. If we're told that this service is not going to be provided, but I find out that my neighbor or my family member at another school district is getting that service, that's really confusing and frustrating for families. The other piece, I think, is that we have to be really cautious about not overreacting to the current moment and really kind of stepping back and looking at the big picture. The big picture is that we're still in a pandemic. So even if we drop below the threshold that says that we're able to open up, we have to be thoughtful about doing that, because we might go right back up a few days later. And so creating that yo-yo effect is very disruptive for students, it's disruptive for parents, and for the school community. And so I think that we've been wanting to be as consistent and also conservative. You brought up health and safety. And we were one of the first counties in the state to send out the notification that we were going to be closing our schools. We didn't want to wait on that, because we recognized that this was something that was putting our families at risk. We have been very thoughtful. We worked really hard this summer to prepare our schools. We developed protocols. We visited almost every public school in the county to review their protocols for what it would look like when they reopen schools for students. We put together a guidance document to provide some clarity to the school community about what things have to be in place to keep students and staff safe. And so we've seen this as the highest priority. At the same time, I think we have to balance, I'm going to bring back that equity piece again, which is that we also recognize that for some families, their ability to work in this environment and to take care of their kids in this context is really challenging. And so as much as possible, we have to make sure that we're keeping that health and safety piece in place, but we're also needing to look at what are the ways that we can provide those services to students. How do we continue mental health services in place? How do we make sure that our students are not going hungry and our families are not going hungry? And so those essential services have to continue no matter what. And our public health officer and the public health department has been working hand in hand with us to make sure that the safety protocols are in place, but also that we're keeping an eye out for our most vulnerable population, our most vulnerable families and our students, to make sure that those services continue to be provided.
That's fantastic. You know, I was going to ask the question a little bit later, but I think you really brought up about really thinking about the vulnerable students and families in our county, and how are we helping support them with all of the basic needs as well as the academic. And given sort of my position at the county office, but also my position at the city and partnerships with community programs and other resources, how has that worked, and how do you feel we can learn from this moment to better holistically support our students and families?
You know, I think we are really lucky to live in Santa Cruz County. It's probably the most collaborative, one of the most collaborative places in this country. The way that our nonprofit agencies, our health clinics, our cities, governments have come together to support, each other in this moment has been absolutely outstanding. And I'm just really proud of the work that is being done by all of these different agencies. When I think about how we've all mobilized to support each other, with the city of Santa Cruz providing childcare services, when I think about what the Community Action Board in Watsonville has been providing for low-income families, just so many examples of people stepping up to speak out and act on behalf of our community. And so the great thing about this is that we have a lot of people that are supporting each other. We're looking out for our families that are experiencing homelessness. We're looking out for our students and trying to provide those interventions and services. We're just having conversations with Community Bridges about providing free lunches and free nutrition services for students on top of what the school districts are doing. all these agencies coming together. And I think that that's been something that's been outstanding. We've been having these great collaborative conversations with all of these different agencies, and we're coming together mostly on Zoom, but having these great conversations about how we can use our resources in an efficient way to support each other and to be thinking about the challenges that we're facing. And one of those challenges has been the overrepresentation of our Latinx population in South County when it comes to disease transmission and the number of positive cases. And so many of these agencies came together working with the county health department to put together campaigns, communication, and resources for families to address that issue. And I think that mobilization of these different resources that includes the school community, but all of these different agencies coming together is just evidence of how committed we are to serving our students and recognizing that we have to support each other because our resources are extremely limited. We're all experiencing cuts in our funding. We're all experiencing limited resources and of course, a limited access to our families. And so we need each other, we need to support each other to be able to ensure that our families are safe and they're being provided those needed services.
So true. It's so great to hear that. And I think you're so right about the Santa Cruz community and our willingness to collaborate. And I think about how, I think about how can we transform our systems post-COVID. And one of the things that I think COVID has really exposed is the health inequities that you spoke about in terms of our most vulnerable and who is most subject to experiencing the inequities of our systems, but also post-COVID to really transform how we think about kind of this ecosystem and our interdependence, right? And I think about childcare and education, and it has historically been the family's issue or the mother's issue, and clearly it's our society's issue. We all benefit when we have a workforce. So how do you feel if you were to envision education post-COVID, what would that look like for you?
Well, I think I really appreciate the way you framed that because, one of the big pieces, for example, is these institutional resources that are missing that we need for our families, like childcare, and probably one of the most fundamental pieces. And we have an amazing group of childcare providers. We meet with them on a weekly basis and we talk about the challenges they're facing. But they are the need is so much greater than our supply right now, and our families experience that. They either have to pay an enormous amount that maybe they can't afford, or in many cases they just don't have it, and they have to rely on kind of more informal systems of support to be able to provide those services for kids. And I think that what COVID-19 has really done is exposed many of these challenges and just kind of made it extremely clear where those areas are missing. And I think that it's a reminder of how important it is to have government and leadership, not only at the local level, but also at the state and the federal level, to be able to provide those resources. And when we don't get those resources, we kind of see how that impacts us. And so I think it's a reminder about the importance of assertive and active levels of leadership. And I think that we're working really hard locally to do that, and in some ways to make up for some of the lack of leadership we're getting at the federal level and other levels, because those resources that we're hoping for are not necessarily coming from there. And so we're having to make do without those resources here. When I think about how COVID-19 has affected us at the educational level, I think that a post-COVID future for education is going to mean a much more responsive educational system. I think that the idea of creating this hybrid idea of education where students can take some part of their learning in person with a teacher, part of their learning online, part of the learning at the community college, I think that piece is not going to go anywhere. I think we're going to be able to continue to provide that. I expect that to be part of what education is going to look like. I'm hopeful that it is going to help us to become much more proficient at individualizing education for students, being able to identify the unique needs and challenges the students bring to the school and be able to provide targeted and focused educational experiences for them. And that's something I think is a really positive thing, because it is about being able to differentiate for the needs and the strengths that students bring to their teacher, to their classroom, to their school. So those are some of the kind of the things that I also see. I also think that one of the challenges we're going to be facing is that this is the impact of COVID-19 on the economy is going to be long term. And we are very concerned about what that's going to mean for us when it comes to cuts in education, for the future. We were lucky in that they didn't cut our school funding this year, but they did give us they did give us deferrals, which are like IOUs, saying go ahead and run your schools and we'll owe you the money. And it's going to create cash flow issues for us, because we're told not to cut, but at the same time, we still have hired our staff while still providing services. And so I think that this has also in many ways helped our state leaders and our community kind of recognize the importance of schooling as such a fundamental safety net component in our community, and that is something that needs to be protected and needs to be made strengthened to be able to continue providing these services. Because when our schools are not open and not providing services, it just, as I said earlier, has such a huge impact on so many different aspects of our families' lives.
Absolutely. And I think we absolutely have challenges ahead, and there's great opportunity for transformation. And I wonder, as we have viewers who may not have direct kind of relationship with education, what would you suggest that they could do to really support education? Is it advocacy at the state and federal level, or is it ways to donate or volunteer, or all of the above? And I'm missing some. How could they get involved, do you think?
I think getting to know many of the different, I think the first step is really getting to know the different kinds of things that schools offer to our families. And when we think of our schools being safety nets for families, I think that for a lot of our community members, the schools are a place where they get information. It's a place where a lot of families, let's say who are undocumented, are able to get resources and services. For many of our students, it's not only about academics. It's really also about mental health services and support systems. Our LGBTQ students have their support from friends and peers and clubs and other organizations. And so all of this kind of universe of services that are available at the schools are extremely important. And I think that recognizing that is really a first step, is understanding what all the different pieces that schools offer, because we do a lot more than just prepare students for their education.
I was wondering, we have seen, and you brought up just how really this experience with COVID has really propelled this digital way of learning, and how that provides opportunity for us to not only kind of respond and figure it out, but also to kind of customize education for our students based on their abilities and needs. And one of the things that I feel really hopeful about is what you described, which is these hybrid education opportunities for kids. The other that we're experiencing moment is that digital divide. And I know you're really just a huge advocate for technology and education, have wonderful partners that you've fostered in the community to help bridge that. And I wonder if you want to speak to the viewers about what that is, if they don't know.
Yeah, thank you. I think, when I think about the challenges that we face when we rely so much on technology, not having an internet connection makes it so much more difficult for us to do pretty much any of the services that we want to offer our students. And so when we talk about the digital divide, we basically are talking about students who do not have a device or do not have an internet connection that's fast enough to access the different resources they need to access. I think that in the first part, the devices, I think we've done a pretty good job as a county to be able to make sure that almost 100%, if not 100% of our students have a device at this point, mostly Chromebooks. But when it comes to internet connectivity, when we started the pandemic, about 1 in 5 of our students in the county didn't have internet access. And I think we've done a really good job in bringing that number down. We don't really have updated numbers, but I think that we've cut that at least in half, probably more than half, by providing mostly hotspots to students. And we've also been partnering with businesses like Cruise.io to be able to set up public hotspots Wi-Fi kind of areas for families in parking lots and near schools to be able to give access to families who are not able to connect. At this point, mostly it's families who don't have access are the ones that the hotspots for some reason don't work. And so they're in a remote area and the cell towers and the network is just not really effective. The challenge, of course, is that internet connectivity requires more and more of a higher bandwidth, and so we've set a goal for ourselves to make sure that that we get to broadband speed, which is 25 megabits per second. And a lot of these hotspots are not really fast enough for that kind of speed. And I think that when it comes to being able to watch instructional videos or being able to access some of the kinds of content that have a lot more information, I think that that's something that we need to work towards. So having hotspots is a good start, but we need to move towards something that's more sustainable, that is also going to help them as the amount of information that they need to access continues to increase. And I think it's also important to remember that connectivity is not just about education right now. When we think about all the resources that we make available, we're doing telehealth communication, we're doing, like mental health services online. We're doing accessing the locations for where free lunches are available. So it's really a lifeline for families. And so not only do we want our students to have access, we want our families to have access, for them to be able to see this as a resource. And connectivity is also one piece. The other piece is knowing how to use it. I could give a family an internet connection and a device, but if they don't know how to use it, or if it's in a language that is not accessible to them, then they're not going to use those resources. And we still haven't really achieved that, overcoming that digital divide. And so there's that infrastructure component, the equipment, and then there's also making sure that our families have the support and the training that they need to be able to use it in a way that helps them access all of these resources. And when I think about that there's absolutely no reason in Santa Cruz County to go hungry with Second Harvest Food Bank and a lot of the resources and on what the schools are doing. But if I don't know where those locations are for where I can get those free services, then I may go hungry. And that's just this I think just a terrible it's a tragedy for us not to be able to connect our families with the resources that they need. And so having those resources is important, but making sure that our families know how to access them is equally important.
Wow, well, that is a wonderful, concrete example of what you were describing as how you're leading with equity and how the COE is leading with equity. And so I just really appreciate you sharing that. It's heartening to know that when you do that, you're thinking about how we're designing our systems to support those that are most vulnerable in a different way. And I think that the opportunity here really is for us to think about our infrastructure. And if we're thinking about, a fiber network or something like that, how could we prioritize as decision makers or as a community that we're looking at our most vulnerable first? And there's so much opportunity, I think, post-COVID for us to move in that direction. And I'm really grateful to have you and those that are working on this thinking about that for our families. I guess, I have maybe just one more question, and then I welcome you to speak about whatever you want. And this I can say at a personal level, I feel that you've really been a leader of integrity and authenticity, and you've had just pure transparency with all your employees about what's going on with the organization, with COVID, with education, opening up the door for input and feedback, but maintaining communication. We have absolutely seen that not working at the federal level. And I can't imagine that you would have envisioned this as your leadership journey. I just wonder, in terms of your personal reflection on kind of where you feel, you've been able to grow as a leader, what does that feel like for you right now?
Well, it's funny you say that because kind of the running joke for me is, since this is my first, a little over a year's into my job as county superintendent, that this I hadn't envisioned how that this would be this kind of trial by fire, and at the same time, I feel like, following in the footsteps of Michael Watkins and his leadership, I feel like that we have this tradition, this legacy of leadership and advocacy for our families. And yes, the challenges change. Yes, we may not be talking about COVID-19 and And when before maybe we were talking about addressing homelessness in our youth, and we're continuing to face that challenge, of course. But I think that when it comes to our approach and our commitment as educators and as leaders and as community members, I think that doesn't really change. And I think that we have a responsibility to as much as possible, get rid of any of the bureaucratic structures that can get in the way of action and responsiveness to our community. And I think part of that is transparency. I think being honest with people, especially when things are confusing and there's contradictory information coming from different areas, from the federal government and the state government and locally. I think that it's important to be honest with that. And I think it is also reassuring to people when their leaders are saying, yes, you know what, I don't totally understand why this is, but this is how it is, and this is how we're going to respond. And I think that people are so ready to step up. I'm so proud of being part of the County Office of Education, the team of people that we work with and are so committed and so dedicated to our students. We just had a Stuff the Bus activity with United Way and raised, our staff raised, money and came in on a Saturday to fill backpacks for our highest needs students. I'm just so inspired by folks and their commitment. And I think that for me as a kind of a new superintendent, that's what keeps me going is not only recognizing the need for us to step up and provide services, but also recognizing that this is a community. We're sharing this responsibility, and that we're all working together to help our families and our students that are having the toughest time during these times. And so it's been, for me, inspiring. I feel like it's a continuity of the work that's been done before at the county office, and I'm just really proud of the people I get to work with and learn from every day. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It's not easy work, but it's definitely so rewarding, and I'm so proud of it.
That's so great. I will just share a personal story. Before I had met you, I was talking to my dad, Michael, and he mentioned that he hired you, and he said the one thing I really appreciate about Faris is he, like me, will always put kids first. And I think you spoke to that just so eloquently, that this is about putting kids and families first. So, kudos and thank you for what you're doing and the entire COE team. Do you have anything else you want to share before we close out our interview?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about our work, and thank you for your leadership. I've been so inspired by the work that you've done as part of the City Council, and your work at the County Office of Education, your advocacy. You're one of those inspiring leaders that I just so appreciate and feel privileged to get a chance to work with. So thanks so much for your leadership, Martine.
Oh, thanks, Faris. The feeling is mutual. So I will just end by saying thank you for watching Community Cafe. Thank you so much to our first guest, Dr. Faris Sabbah, County Superintendent of Schools for Santa Cruz County. Again, my name is Martine Watkins. I am the host, and please subscribe to our channel to see upcoming shows and to visit the website at martinewatkins.com to follow what's going on. And of course, if you're on Facebook and Instagram, you could catch us at Martine for City Council or Martine Watkins for SC City Council at Instagram. So with that, thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation, the Community Cafe, first ever with Dr. Faris Sabbah. Be well, everybody. Thanks so much.